Jake Morrison had been sitting in the same uncomfortable chair for 3 hours, watching aliens argue about money. The Galactic Council chamber was huge, filled with creatures from across the galaxy, but they all seemed to want the same thing. More credits, more power, more territory. The mining rights to Kepler 438b are worth at least 50 million credits, hissed the Zephyrian representative, his snake-like body coiled around his floating platform. The Silicon Hegemony's offer is insulting. The robot ambassador from the Silicon Hegemony responded with electronic clicks and beeps that the translation device turned into cold words. Economic efficiency demands optimal resource allocation. Emotional attachment to planetary surfaces is illogical. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. As Earth's junior ambassador to the Galactic Council, he had seen this same scene play out dozens of times. Someone found a valuable planet. The big powers fought over who got to strip mine it. The people who actually lived there got nothing. Or worse, got kicked out of their homes. Captain Lisa Rodriguez leaned over from the seat next to him. She was supposed to be the military advisor, but there was not much military business to discuss when humans only had 12 ships in their entire space fleet. Another mining world sold to whoever pays the most, she whispered. The Corvani. People have been living on that planet for 300 years. Now they have to find somewhere else to go. Jake nodded sadly. The Corvani were peaceful farmers who had never bothered anyone. But their world had rare metals under the ground, so the galactic powers wanted it. The Corvani would become refugees, scattered across space with nothing but the clothes on their backs. This was how the galaxy worked. The strong took what they wanted from the weak. There were laws, but they were written by the powerful to protect the powerful. Justice was something you could buy if you had enough credits. But Jake had been studying galactic history in his spare time, and he had noticed something strange. Every alien species he read about had stories from their past about warriors who fought for honor instead of money. The Altarians once had their blades sworn, noble fighters who protected the innocent. The Centauri had their void guardians who traveled the stars helping those in need. Even the bug-like hive speakers had queen's champions who followed a code. Of honor, all of these warrior groups had one thing in common. They were gone, completely gone. Not just defeated in battle or disbanded by governments. Erased from history as if they had never existed. It's like someone was afraid of them, Jake muttered to himself. Lisa looked at him with curiosity. Afraid of what? Knights, Jake said. Every species in this galaxy used to have something like knights. Warriors who followed a code of honor. Warriors who protected people instead of just fighting for money. But they're all gone now. Lisa frowned. Maybe they just became outdated. Modern warfare is about technology and economics, not individual heroes. Jake was not convinced. He had read too many stories that ended the same way. Honorable warriors disbanded for the good of society. Knight orders dissolved to maintain peace. Champion guilds eliminated to promote efficiency. The language was always different, but the result was always the same. The galaxy had systematically destroyed the idea that warriors could be motivated by anything other than profit. That evening, Jake sat in his small quarters aboard the human diplomatic ship. The Endeavor was not much to look at compared to the home. Massive vessels of the other galactic powers, but it was home. He had been going through old files, trying to understand why every species had abandoned their warrior traditions at roughly the same time in history. The answer came from an unexpected source. Deep in the ship's computer files, Jake found a message that had been sent to Earth Command before humans made first contact with alien civilizations. The message was marked with the highest security classification, and Jake probably was not supposed to be able to read it. But someone had made a mistake with the file permissions. The message was from the Galactic Council, dated 25 years ago. Back then, humans were still stuck on Earth, just beginning to explore their own solar system. The message was short, but it made Jake's blood run cold. Species Assessment Report, 2847 Alpha. Subject: Humans of Sol 3. Analysis of cultural broadcasts. Indicates dangerous predisposition toward honor-based warrior traditions. Historical references to knights, samurai, paladins, and similar concepts suggest potential for revival of extinct knight-class organizations. Recommendation: monitor for any signs of organized honor warrior development. Suppress immediately. Upon detection, classification, extreme threat. Jake read the message 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. The Galactic Council had been watching humanity before humans even knew aliens existed. They had studied human movies, books, and television shows, and they were terrified of what they found. The galaxy was afraid that humans might bring back knights. Jake leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Every alien species had once had warriors who fought for honor, for justice, for the protection of the innocent. These warriors had been systematically eliminated across the galaxy. Now humanity had joined galactic civilization, and the powers that be were watching carefully to make sure humans did not make the same mistake their ancestors had made. But why were they so afraid? What was so dangerous about warriors who followed a code of honor? Jake thought about the Corvani farmers who were losing their home planet. He thought about the dozens of other injustices he had witnessed in the council chamber. He thought about a galaxy where the strong preyed on the weak, where justice was for sale, where honor was considered a dangerous and outdated concept. Maybe the Galactic Council was right to be afraid. Maybe the galaxy needed something it had forgotten. Maybe it needed Knights. Jake opened a new file on his computer and began to type. If the galaxy had erased the idea of knights once, he wanted to understand how and why. He wanted to know what those ancient warriors had stood for, what they had fought for, what had made them so dangerous to the established order. He started with human history, reading about the knights of medieval Earth, warriors bound by oaths, to protect the innocent, to defend the weak, to show mercy to defeated enemies. Men and women who believed that strength came with responsibility, that power should be used to serve others rather than to dominate them. Then he moved on to alien histories, digging deeper into the stories of the Bladesworn, the Void Guardians, the Queen's Champions. The more he read, the more he understood why the galactic powers had been so determined to destroy these orders. Knights were not just warriors. They were an idea that some things were more important than money or power, the idea that the strong had a duty to protect the weak, the idea that honor mattered more than profit. In a galaxy ruled by economics and intimidation, such ideas were truly dangerous. Jake worked through the night, compiling everything he could find about the lost warrior traditions of the galaxy. By morning, he had a complete picture of what had been lost. Every species had given up something precious, something that had made them more than just another collection of individuals competing for resources. They had given up the idea that they could be heroes. As Jake finished his research, he heard the morning announcement over the ship's communication system. Another day of diplomatic meetings. Another day of watching the powerful divide up the galaxy while the powerless suffered in silence. But now, Jake knew something that the Galactic Council hoped humanity would never discover. He knew that things had not always been this way. He knew that there had once been another path, another way of living among the stars. And he knew that path could be walked again. The galaxy had erased the idea of knights, but ideas were hard to kill completely. Somewhere in the human heart, the dream of honor-bound warriors still lived. The question was whether anyone would be brave enough to wake it up. Jake Morrison closed his computer and prepared for another day of watching injustice triumph over justice. But for the first time since joining the diplomatic corps, he had hope. Change was possible. Honor could return to the galaxy. It would just take someone willing to be the first to remember what it meant to be a knight. 3 months after Jake Morrison discovered the truth about the galaxy's fear of knights, the emergency alarm woke him from deep sleep. Red lights flashed throughout the diplomatic ship, and the computer's voice echoed through the corridors. Priority. One message from New Haven Colony. All diplomatic personnel report to communications immediately. Jake threw on his uniform and ran to the communication center. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was already there, along with the other members of the human diplomatic team. On the main screen, they could see Governor Patricia Wells of New Haven Colony. She looked terrified. "The Vorthan Empire has given us 6 hours," Governor Wells said, her voice shaking. 6 hours to evacuate 2 million people from our planet. They want to strip mine the entire surface for rare metals. If we're not gone by then, they'll start orbital bombardment. Jake felt sick to his stomach. New Haven was one of humanity's newest colonies, a farming world where families had built new lives far from Earth. 2 million innocent people, including children, elderly folks, and families who had never hurt anyone. "What does Earth Command say?" Lisa asked. Governor Wells shook her head. "They're requesting a diplomatic meeting with the Vorthan Empire. They say it might take weeks to arrange." "We don't have weeks. We have 6 hours." The communication ended, leaving the humans staring at a blank screen. Jake knew what would happen next. Earth's diplomats would negotiate. The politicians would make deals. Maybe they would offer the Vorthans something better elsewhere. Maybe they would agree to share the mining profits. But the people of New Haven would lose their homes and become refugees scattered across human space. It was the same story he had watched play out dozens of times in the Galactic Council. The strong took what they wanted. The weak suffered. That was how the galaxy worked. But 300 light-years away, on Mars, Marine Colonel Danny Wright was having different thoughts. Danny had received the same emergency message about New Haven. According to military protocol, he should wait for orders from Earth Command. His battalion was conducting training exercises in the Martian desert, preparing for hypothetical battles that might never come. The proper thing to do was follow the chain of command and let the diplomats handle the situation. Instead, Danny found himself thinking about his grandfather's stories. The old man had been a soldier in Earth's last great war, back when humans still fought each other instead of exploring the stars. He used to tell Danny about something called the Warriors. Code, rules that real soldiers followed, even when nobody was watching. Protect the innocent. Never abandon those who depend on you. Do what's right, even when it's hard. Danny had joined the Marines to serve humanity, not to sit in the desert while innocent people died. He opened his computer and searched through the military regulations, looking for something he half remembered. From his training, there it was, buried in an ancient section of the military code that nobody had used in over a century. The right of just cause. It said that when civilian lives were in immediate danger and official channels had failed, military commanders could act independently to protect innocent people. Danny stood up and activated the communication system. For his entire battalion, 600 Marines stopped their training exercises and gathered around speakers to hear what their colonel had to say. "Marines, listen carefully," Danny began. "In 6 hours, the Vorthan Empire is going to start bombing innocent civilians on New Haven Colony. 2 million people, including children. Earth Command is trying to negotiate, but negotiations take time that these people don't have." The Marines listened in silence. Many of them had families back on Earth or on the colonies. They all knew what it meant to have people they cared about in danger. "I'm going to New Haven," Danny continued. "Not because someone ordered me to go. Not because it's my job. I'm going because it's the right thing to do. I'm invoking the right of just cause, and I'm asking for volunteers." Danny paused, looking at the faces of his Marines. "Anyone who comes with me needs to understand something. We're not going as soldiers following orders. We're going as guardians of the innocent. We're going to protect people who can't protect themselves. If you can't accept that responsibility, you can stay here with no shame." The Marines looked at each other. Some of them were young, barely out of training. Others were veterans who had served for decades. But they all understood what their colonel was really asking. He was asking them to be more than soldiers. He was asking them to be something the galaxy had forgotten. He was asking them to be knights. Sergeant Ben Hayes, a tough Marine from Texas, stepped forward first. "I volunteer, sir. Those people need help, and we're the only ones who can give it to them." Private Amy Foster, a pilot from California, raised her hand. "My ship is fueled and ready, sir. When do we leave?" One by one, every single Marine in the battalion volunteered. Not one stayed behind. The journey to New Haven took 2 days at maximum speed. Danny had commandeered a transport ship called the Defender, loading it with Marines, weapons, and supplies. But something extraordinary happened during the trip. The Marines began organizing themselves differently. Instead of the usual military hierarchy based on rank and experience, they started forming groups based on oaths and promises. They pledged to protect innocent people, even at the cost of their own lives. They promised to show mercy to enemies who surrendered. They swore never to retreat while civilians were in danger. Sergeant Hayes gathered the younger Marines and taught them about honor. "It's not about being brave," he explained. "Brave is just not being afraid. Honor is doing the right thing even when you're afraid, even when it hurts, even when nobody's watching." Private Foster organized the pilots into what she called the Sky Wardens. Their job was not just to fight enemy ships, but to protect evacuation vessels and civilian transports. "Every life matters," she told her squadron. "We don't measure success by how many enemies we kill. We measure it by how many innocents we save." The Marines created rules for themselves that had nothing to do with military regulations. They would never harm civilians, even enemy civilians. They would treat prisoners with dignity. They would share their food with hungry people, even if it meant going hungry themselves. They would tell the truth, even when lies would be easier. Without realizing it, they were creating the first knightly order that humanity had seen in over 1,000 years. When the Defender arrived at New Haven, the evacuation was already in. Chaos. Civilian ships were trying to escape the planet, but they were old and slow. Families were crying as they left behind everything they had built. Many people were trapped in remote settlements with no way to reach the spaceports in time. The Vorthen fleet was already in the system. 50 massive warships, each one larger and more powerful than any ship in the human fleet. Their commander, General Krosk, had a reputation for ruthlessness. He had conquered dozens of worlds using overwhelming force and terror tactics. Danny positioned the Defender between the Vorthen fleet and New Haven. His single ship looked tiny compared to the enemy armada. On the bridge, his communications officer opened a channel to the Vorthen flagship. "Attention Vorthen fleet," Danny broadcast. "This world is under our protection. The people of New Haven are innocent civilians who have done you no harm. Leave this system now, and there will be no bloodshed." General Krosk's laughter echoed across the communication channel. The Vorthen was a massive creature, covered in thick scales and armed with natural weapons that could tear through metal. "Human, you have one ship against our 50. This is not war, it is mathematics. You cannot possibly win." Danny looked around his bridge at the Marines who had volunteered to follow him into impossible odds. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. But they were also determined. They had made promises, and they intended to keep them. "General, let me teach you about a different kind of mathematics," Danny replied calmly. "You have 50 ships and 50,000 soldiers, but they're fighting for money and conquest. My people are fighting for something more important. They're fighting to protect innocent lives. That changes the equation. You are delusional, human. Surrender now, and I will allow your people to evacuate with the colonists. Continue this foolishness, and you will all die." Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he opened a channel to every ship in his small fleet, every Marine under his command, and every civilian on New Haven Colony. "To all who can hear this message," he said, "we are Marines of Earth, but today we are something more. Today we are guardians of the innocent, protectors of the weak, servants of justice. We do not fight for glory or conquest. We fight because it is right. We fight because someone must stand between evil and innocence. We fight because we have sworn an oath that cannot be broken." He paused, looking out at the massive enemy fleet that surrounded them. "We are not just soldiers anymore. We are knights. And knights do not yield when innocents are in danger." The galaxy was about to rediscover what it had tried so hard to forget. Honor was not dead. It had just been sleeping, waiting for someone brave enough to wake it up. The first Vorthan attack came at dawn. General Krosk had decided to make an example of the humans who dared to challenge his mighty fleet. He sent 20 of his fastest ships to destroy the single human vessel, expecting the battle to be over in minutes. But Danny Wright and his Marines did not fight like regular soldiers. They fought like something the galaxy had not seen in 800 years. Instead of trying to destroy as many enemy ships as possible, Danny focused on one goal: protecting the civilians who were still evacuating from New Haven. When Vorthan fighters dove toward the planet to attack evacuation ships, human pilots threw their own ships directly into the enemy's path. Private Amy Foster led her squadron of 12 fighters against 40 Vorthan attack craft. The smart military move would have been to stay together and pick off enemy ships one by one. Instead, Amy split her forces, sending each pilot to protect a different group of civilian vessels. "Remember," she told her pilots over the radio, "we're not here to win dogfights. We're here to get families to safety. Every transport that escapes is a victory." Amy's fighter was old and slow compared to the sleek Vorthan craft chasing her. But she had something the enemy pilots did not understand. She was not fighting to destroy them. She was fighting to save innocent people. That gave her a different kind of strength. When 3 Vorthan fighters cornered a civilian transport full of children, Amy flew her ship directly between them and the helpless vessel. The enemy pilots fired everything they had at her, but Amy held her position, taking hit after hit. Her ship's armor was failing, her engines were damaged, but she did not move away from the transport. "This is Sky Warden Foster," she broadcast on the emergency channel. "I'm taking heavy fire, but the civilian ship is safe. Tell those kids they're going to see their parents again." Amy's fighter finally exploded under the enemy bombardment, but the transport escaped with all 300 children aboard. On the Vorthan ships, the alien pilots stared in confusion at their scanners. They had won the battle, but somehow it felt like they had lost something important. Meanwhile, on the main human ship, Sergeant Ben Hayes was leading Marines in the most unusual boarding action in military history. When Vorthan soldiers broke through the hull and invaded the Defender, Ben did not order his Marines to kill every enemy they found. Instead, he gave them different orders. "Protect the civilians first," Ben shouted as laser fire filled the corridors. "Push the battle away from the evacuation areas. If any Vorthans surrender, treat them with respect." The Marines fought with incredible courage, but they also fought with mercy. When a group of young Vorthan soldiers got trapped in a damaged section of the ship, Marine Corporal Kevin Brooks risked his life to help them escape. He could have left them to die, but that was not what knights did. "Why do you help us?" asked one of the young Vorthons as Kevin led them to safety. "We are your enemies." Kevin looked at the alien soldier, who was barely old enough to be in the military. "You're not my enemy. You're just a kid who got sent to fight someone else's war. I won't let you die for their mistakes." The young Vorthon stared at Kevin in amazement. In his culture, enemies were meant to be destroyed completely. The idea of showing mercy to defeated foes was completely foreign to him. But the most important moment of the battle happened when the Vorthons captured Sergeant Ben Hayes during the boarding action. According to galactic law, prisoners of war could be executed, enslaved, or used as bargaining chips. General Krosk decided to make propaganda out of Ben's capture, broadcasting his interrogation to every ship in both fleets. General Krosk was a terrifying creature, twice the size of a human and covered in natural armor. His claws could tear through metal, and his voice could shake the walls of his command chamber. He had broken the will of countless prisoners using fear and pain. "Tell your people to surrender," Krosk demanded, his massive form looming over the captured Marine. "Tell them their cause is hopeless. Tell them to abandon these worthless colonists and save themselves." Ben Hayes looked up at the alien general without fear. He was bruised and bleeding from the fight, but his eyes were calm and determined. "I can't do that, General. Cannot or will not." Krosk's claws extended, gleaming in the harsh light of the interrogation chamber. "Will not," Ben replied simply. "I took an oath to protect innocent people. I gave my word that I would never abandon them. A man's word is all he really has in this universe. Without honor, we're just animals fighting over scraps." Krosk roared in frustration. He had conquered 47 worlds using intimidation and cruelty. Prisoners always broke eventually. They always chose their own lives over abstract principles. "Your honor will not stop my weapons from burning that planet. Your oath will not save those colonists when I reduce their cities to ash." Ben smiled. "Sadly, maybe not, but others will take my place. And they won't break either. You can kill me, General, but you can't kill what I represent. You can destroy my body, but you can't destroy the idea that some things are worth more than life itself." The broadcast went out live to every human ship and colony in the system. Thousands of people heard Ben Hayes speak those words. But more importantly, the broadcast was picked up by communication relays and sent across human space at faster than light speeds. On Earth, families gathered around their screens to watch a simple Marine from Texas explain what it meant to have honor. On Mars, workers in the mining colonies heard Ben talk about keeping promises even when it cost everything. On the space stations and research outposts scattered throughout human territory, people listened to a soldier describe why protecting the innocent was more important than protecting yourself. Within hours, something unprecedented began to happen. Humans across the galaxy started taking the same oath that Ben Hayes had taken. They called themselves the New Knights, and they pledged to follow the same code that was about to cost Ben his life. On Earth, factory worker Tom Jackson stood up in the middle of his shift and announced that he was joining the New Knights. "If Sergeant Hayes can die for his principles, I can live for mine," he said. On the mining station series, engineer Sarah Williams organized her coworkers into a group called the Void Wardens. Their mission was to protect merchant ships from pirates and raiders. "No more innocent people will suffer while we stand by and watch," she declared. Even on distant exploration ships, human crews began forming nightly orders. Captain Frank Morris of the research vessel Discovery renamed his ship the Lightbringer and dedicated his crew to protecting alien civilizations that could not protect themselves. Back at New Haven, General Krosk grew more frustrated as the battle continued. His forces were winning, but it did not feel like victory. Every time his soldiers defeated a group of human Marines, the humans fought harder instead of giving up. Every time he destroyed a human ship, two more seemed to appear to take its place. Problem was not that the humans were better fighters. The Vorthans had superior numbers, better weapons, and more advanced technology. The problem was that the humans were fighting for something different. They were not fighting to win. They were fighting to save lives, to keep promises, to uphold principles that Krosk did not understand. When Vorthan soldiers boarded human ships, they expected the defenders to focus on killing as many attackers as possible. Instead, the humans concentrated on evacuating civilians and treating wounded enemies. When human fighters engaged Vorthan aircraft, they ignored easy targets to protect. Helpless transports. It was the strangest war Krosk had ever fought. His enemies seemed more concerned with saving lives than taking them. They offered mercy to defeated foes. They risked their own lives to protect people they had never met. They treated principles like honor and duty as if they were more valuable than money or power. After 12 hours of battle, Krosk realized something that chilled him to his bones. He was not just fighting human soldiers. He was fighting an idea. And ideas, as every galactic power knew, were the most dangerous weapons in the universe. Ben Hayes died that day, executed by General Krosk in front of the cameras. But his words lived on, spreading from ship to ship, planet to planet, system to system. The galaxy had not seen knights for 800 years, but now they were being reborn in the hearts of ordinary humans who decided that some things were worth fighting. 4. The Battle of New Haven ended with a Vorthan victory. The human fleet was destroyed, the Marines were dead, and the planet was eventually strip-mined as planned. But everyone knew that something important had changed. The age of pure power and profit was ending. The age of knights had begun again. 6 months after the Battle of New Haven, Jake Morrison stood in his office on the diplomatic station, staring at reports that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. The documents spread across his desk told the story of a transformation that was sweeping through human space like wildfire. The Knights of New Haven, led by the survivors of Danny Wright's battalion, had become the model for dozens of similar groups. Every human colony seemed to have formed its own knightly order. The Void Wardens protected trade routes from pirates. The Star Guardians defended research stations in dangerous sectors. The Solar Shields helped refugees and disaster victims across human territory. But what amazed Jake most was not the number of these groups, but how they operated. Unlike military units or corporate security forces, the Knights asked for nothing in return for their services. They protected merchant convoys without payment. They rescued stranded civilians without reward. They followed a code of honor that put service above profit. Captain Lisa Rodriguez walked into Jake's office carrying a cup of coffee and a grim expression. She had been promoted to head of intelligence for the Human Diplomatic Corps, which meant she spent her days reading reports about how the galaxy was reacting to humanity's transformation. The major powers are meeting again, Lisa said, setting down a classified document. 3rd emergency session this month. They're calling it the Stability Pact, but we both know what it really is. Jake picked up the document and read the intercepted communications. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium, the Silicon Hegemony, the Vorthan Empire, and 6 other major galactic powers had formed an alliance with one stated purpose: containing the human threat. The problem was not that humans were conquering territory or building massive fleets. The problem was that humans were changing how business was done in the galaxy. Human merchants were refusing profitable deals that would harm civilian populations. Human mercenaries were turning down lucrative contracts that involved attacking innocent people. Human diplomats were making demands based on moral principles instead of economic advantage. They're scared, Jake said, reading through the intelligence reports. For 800 years, the galaxy has run on a simple principle. Might makes right. The strong prey on the weak, and the weak accept it because they have no choice. But now humans are offering a different path. Lisa nodded grimly. And some aliens are starting to listen. Look at this report from the Corvani refugees. Jake, read the document with growing amazement. The Corvani people, who had lost their homeworld to Vorthan mining operations, had been scattered across dozens of refugee camps. They were poor, homeless, and forgotten by the galactic community. But human nightly orders had begun visiting. The camps, bringing food, medical supplies, and protection from raiders who preyed on refugees. The Corvani had started calling the humans Star Knights and had begun forming their own honor-based warrior groups. Young Corvani were taking oaths to protect the innocent and help the needy, following the example they had seen from human knights. It's spreading, Jake realized. The idea is spreading to other species. Lisa pointed to another report. The Altarians are asking questions about their own history. They want to know why their blade-sworn orders were disbanded 3 centuries ago. Some of their historians are saying the dissolution was not voluntary, that the galactic powers forced it on them. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If other species began to rediscover their own nightly traditions, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift dramatically. For 800 years, the major powers had controlled smaller civilizations through economic pressure and military intimidation. But knights changed the equation. Knights fought for principles instead of profit, which made them much harder to control or corrupt. The communication system in Jake's office buzzed with an incoming message marked Priority Alpha. Jake activated the screen and saw Ambassador Patricia Wells, the former governor of New Haven Colony, who had joined the diplomatic corps after losing her world. "Jake, we have a situation," Patricia said, her voice tense with worry. "The Altarian Confederacy has officially requested human military protection. They're facing economic warfare from the Zephyrian Trade Consortium, and their government is about to collapse." Jake exchanged glances with Lisa. This was exactly what they had been afraid of. If humans started providing military protection to other species, the galactic powers would have no choice but to respond with force. "What kind of protection are they asking for?" Jake asked. "Full nightly protection," Patricia replied. "They want the Knights of New Haven to establish a permanent base in their system and defend their worlds from any aggression. In exchange, they're offering us nothing except their friendship and gratitude." Lisa whistled softly. "That's not how galactic politics works. Nations don't provide military protection without getting something valuable in return." "That's exactly the point," Jake said, understanding the implications. "The Altarians are not offering us trade deals or mining rights or strategic advantages. They're asking us to help them because it's the right thing to do. And if we say yes, we're proving that humans really have changed the rules of how civilizations interact." Over the next few weeks, Jake found himself at the center of the most important decision in human history. Earth Command was divided on how to respond to the Altarian request. The military wanted to help, influenced by the nightly orders that had grown within their ranks. The politicians were worried about provoking a war with the major galactic powers. The economists pointed out that protecting the Altarians would bring no financial benefits to humanity. But the decision was made for them when Captain Danny Wright, the former Marine colonel, who now led the Knights of New Haven, made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. The Knights of Terra accept the Altarian request for protection. Danny declared in a broadcast sent to every inhabited system, "We will defend any world, any people, any civilization that asks for our help. We ask for nothing in return except that you treat your own people with the same honor we will show you." Jake watched the broadcast from his office, knowing that everything had just changed. Danny had not asked for permission from Earth Command or the diplomatic corps. He had made the decision based on the knightly code that now guided his actions. Protect the innocent. Defend the weak. Keep your word no matter the cost. Within hours, the response was overwhelming. 12 different species sent requests for human protection. The Corvani refugees asked for knights to guard their camps. The Peaceful Harmony Collective requested help against pirate raids. Even some individual planets within major empires, secretly, contacted human diplomatic offices, asking if knights could help them resist oppression from their own governments. But the most significant response came from an unexpected source. Captain Kevin Brooks, who had once served with the Centauri Mercenary Guild, arrived at the human diplomatic station with his ship and his entire crew. "We've been fighting for money our whole lives," Kevin told Jake during their meeting. "Fighting for whoever paid us the most, doing whatever job brought the biggest profit. But when we fought against your knights at New Haven, we learned something we had forgotten. There are things worth more than credits." Kevin's crew had abandoned their mercenary contracts and requested permission to join the human knightly orders. They were not the only ones. Across the galaxy, individual ships and small fleets were defecting from corporate security forces and mercenary companies, asking to fight for honor instead of money. The galactic powers realized they were facing something they had never encountered before, an idea that could not be bought, threatened, or destroyed through conventional means. The concept of knighthood was spreading like a virus through the galactic community, infecting species that had forgotten what it meant to fight for something bigger than themselves. The final confrontation came when the Zephyrian Trade Council delivered an ultimatum to the Galactic Council. Jake sat in the human delegation section, watching as the snake-like alien representative addressed the assembly of 1,000 worlds. "The human experiment in primitive honor codes threatens the stability of galactic civilization," the consul announced. "Their so-called knights disrupt established trade relationships and encourage rebellion against legitimate authority. We demand that humanity dissolve these dangerous organizations and return to conventional military structures." The chamber erupted in debate. Some species supported the ultimatum, fearing that knightly orders in their own territories would challenge established power structures. Others defended humanity's right to organize their military however they chose. But Jake was not listening to the political arguments. He was thinking about Sergeant Ben Hayes, who had died rather than abandon his principles. He was thinking about the refugees who had found hope because human knights brought them food and protection. He was thinking about young aliens across the galaxy who were learning that strength could be used to protect instead of to dominate. When the debate finally ended, Jake stood up to address the council. The chamber fell silent as he walked to the speaker's platform, knowing that his words would determine whether the galaxy moved toward a new age of honor or fell back into the old patterns of might making right. The war that followed Jake Morrison's defiant speech was unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever seen. It was not fought with massive space battles or planetary invasions. Instead, it was fought in the hearts and minds of ordinary people who had to choose between the old ways and something new. The Stability Pact began their campaign by targeting human trade routes. They used their economic power to force other species to stop doing business with human colonies. They blocked shipping lanes and imposed heavy taxes on any goods that came from human space. The goal was simple: make life so difficult for humans that they would abandon their knightly orders and return to normal military organization. But the knights had prepared for this. Instead of relying on traditional trade networks, they created something called the Honor Road. This was a system of mutual aid that connected human colonies, knightly orders, and friendly alien worlds. When the people of New Terra needed medical supplies, the Knights of the Void delivered them for free. When the mining station Alpha 7 ran out of food, The Star Guardians shared their own rations without asking for payment. The honor road worked because it was based on different principles and normal galactic commerce. Instead of profit and competition, it relied on generosity and cooperation. People helped each other because it was the right thing to do, not because they expected something in return. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, now leading intelligence operations for the Human Diplomatic Corps, discovered something remarkable in her reports. The honor road was not just helping humans. Alien refugees, independent traders, and small colonies from dozens of species were asking to join the network. They offered what they could and received what they needed, following the knightly principle that the strong should help the weak. The stability pact escalated their campaign when economic pressure failed to work. They hired mercenary fleets to attack human installations and knightly bases. These were supposed to look like pirate raids or terrorist attacks, not official military action. The galactic powers wanted to destroy the knights without taking responsibility for a war, but something unexpected happened when the mercenaries encountered the knights in battle. Captain Kevin Brooks, the former Centauri mercenary who had joined the Knights of New Haven, found himself facing his old comrades in a firefight above the planet Harmony Prime. The battle should have been simple. The mercenaries had superior numbers and firepower. They were experienced fighters who had won dozens of conflicts across the galaxy. But they were not prepared for enemies who offered them mercy instead of destruction. When Kevin's squadron disabled a mercenary ship, he broadcast a message to the defeated crew. "This is Captain Brooks of the Knights of New Haven. Your ship is disabled, but your life support is stable. Surrender now, and you will be treated with honor. Your families will be notified that you are safe. No harm will come to you if you yield." The mercenary captain, a tough warrior named Rex Carter, was confused by the offer. In his experience, disabled ships were either destroyed or their crews enslaved. The idea of honorable treatment for defeated enemies was completely foreign to him. "Why should we trust you?" Rex asked over the communication channel. "Because giving you my word means something to me," Kevin replied. "Because I believe that even in war, we can choose to be better than animals fighting over scraps." Rex Carter surrendered his ship and crew. But more importantly, he began asking questions about why the Knights fought and what they stood for. Within a week, he had requested permission to join the knightly orders himself. His entire crew followed him. The same pattern repeated itself across dozens of battles. Mercenaries who came to destroy the Knights found themselves confronted by opponents who treated them with dignity and respect. Many began to question what they were fighting for and why. Some switched sides, choosing to fight for honor instead of money. Others simply refused to take contracts against human targets. The Stability Pact realized they were facing a problem they had never encountered before. The Knights were not just winning battles, they were converting their enemies. The idea of honorable warfare was spreading even to the mercenary companies hired to destroy it. The turning point came when the Altarian Confederacy, protected by human knights, made a formal request to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Elena Martinez, representing the Altarian people, stood before the assembly and delivered a speech that changed everything. "For 3 centuries, my people have lived in fear," Elena said, her voice clear and strong. "Fear of economic warfare from larger powers. Fear of raiders who prey on peaceful worlds. Fear that speaking out against injustice would bring punishment down on our heads." She gestured toward the human delegation, where Jake Morrison sat with representatives of various knightly orders. "And the humans came to us, not with demands for trade concessions or military bases, not with threats or bribes or political pressure. They came with a simple offer. We will protect you because it is right, and we ask nothing in return except that you treat your own people with the same honor we show you." Elena paused, looking around the vast chamber at representatives from 1,000 worlds. The Knights of Terra have kept their word. Pirates flee from our shipping lanes. Economic predators think twice before targeting our worlds. Our children sleep safely because honorable warriors stand guard. And all we had to give in return was our friendship. The chamber was silent as Elena continued. My people have decided to revive our own ancient traditions. The blade sworn of Altair will rise again, following the example set by human knights. We will protect the innocent, defend the weak, and show mercy to our enemies. We invite any species that remembers what honor means to join us. Within days of Alana's speech, the requests began pouring in. The Corvani refugees formally established the Order of the Wandering Star, dedicated to helping displaced people across the galaxy. The peaceful farmers of the Harmony Collective created the Garden Wardens, sworn to protect agricultural worlds from raiders. Even some groups within the major powers began forming secret knightly organizations. The Vorthan Empire, the same power that had destroyed New Haven Colony, faced internal rebellion when a group of young officers formed the Iron Honor Brotherhood. They refused orders to attack civilian targets and began providing protection to vulnerable communities within Vorthan Space. General Krosk, the brutal commander who had executed Sergeant Ben Hayes, found himself facing an impossible situation. His own soldiers were questioning orders that violated the principles they had learned from human broadcasts. Some were even defecting to join multi-species knightly orders that operated outside of official military structures. The final confrontation came not in the Galactic Council chamber, but in a small system on the edge of civilized space. The planet Eden was home to a mixed population of refugees from a dozen different species. They had built a peaceful community based on cooperation and mutual aid, following the knightly principles they had learned from human example. The Stability Pact decided to make Eden an example. If they could destroy this symbol of interspecies cooperation, they could prove that the knightly ideal was just a dangerous fantasy. They assembled a massive fleet and gave the people of Eden 24 hours to evacuate. The response surprised everyone. Instead of running away, the refugees sent out a call for help. Not a call for military aid or political intervention, but a simple request: help us protect our home. Knights from dozens of species answered the call. Human orders like the Star Guardians and Void Wardens, Altarian Bladesworn, Corvani Wandering, Stars, even former mercenaries who had abandoned their old lives to fight for something meaningful. They came from across the galaxy, not because they had been ordered to, but because they had chosen to. The Battle of Eden lasted 3 days. The Stability Pact had superior numbers and firepower, but they were fighting an enemy they did not understand. The Knights were not trying to conquer territory or destroy enemy forces. They were trying to protect innocent people and preserve a way of life based on honor and cooperation. When Stability Pact forces landed on Eden, they expected to face desperate resistance from poorly organized militias. Instead, they found themselves fighting alongside the very people they had come to displace. Vorthan soldiers who had been inspired by knightly ideals turned their weapons on their own commanders. Zephyrian pilots refused orders to bomb civilian areas. Silicon hegemony troops began protecting refugee camps instead of destroying them. The war ended not with a great battle, but with a great awakening. Across the galaxy, ordinary people began choosing honor over profit, cooperation over competition, protection of the weak over exploitation of the strong. The galactic powers found themselves ruling over populations that no longer accepted the old ways of doing business. Jake Morrison stood in the Galactic Council chamber 1 year after his defiant speech, watching as representatives from 47 species formally established the Knights Compact. This was not a military alliance or trade agreement, but a promise that the signatory worlds would follow the principles of knighthood, protect the innocent, defend the weak, show mercy to enemies, and keep their word no matter the cost. They... Galaxy tried to erase the idea of knights once, Jake said to the assembly. They succeeded for 800 years.